Now for something a little bit different. We're going to be building a shop in here, and there are some basic facilities. This is going to be a poured floor at some point in time, and I've got a saw job and some maintenance I got to do on my normal work saws. Those are the two Chinese saws. Bling saw, by the way, has got a fair amount of time on it, if you couldn't tell, and actually is holding up. Much to my surprise, it's held up quite well, and it's been abused. Every once in a while I got to clean this air filter because it sucks the dirt right through it. And like an old motorcycle filter, you got to clean it and oil it. Of course, that always dabs oil over your arm. So it's not exactly a practical build, but it sure makes chips and makes them in a hurry. It's fun. But for today, you got to take this saw right here and break it down to bits and pieces and change a bearing. So I don't have my standard rig right here. I wonder if I can use this for a tripod somehow. Something in here. Ladder. Oh, there's a ladder over there. I'll go use it. And what I want to do is take down that 576. I got to tear it down and change the bearings out in the cases. Got a plastic bin that I'm going to put all the parts in, and then reassemble it tomorrow. The one thing I don't like about 576s is the little screws. These little tiny screws they use for that cover instead of the standard Allen heads. Don't lose these little top hats that go in the handle. There's one each side. Okay, the thing you got to remember is you detach this yellow line that comes from the ignition up to that spade right there, that connector right there. And then this one right here, the bullet connector, you disassemble that. And then the ground wire, you disassemble from the screw down to the case. And then basically all that stays. You don't have to do anything with it. We're not going to do anything with the top end. It's fine just the way it is. Make sure that the Allen wrench can actually get full engagement. There's nothing more frustrating than getting down in there with an Allen head wrench to cut that loose and finding out that you strip either the wrench or the head of the screw because you only had half engagement, you know what I'm saying? So I clean them out. And then I stick another wrench down in there because I want to make sure I got full engagement. Sometimes you can't tell with an impact driver, but I can tell with this. I can tell by feel. Yeah, see, I got full engagement there. There you go. Basically the way this operates is you got to get it kind of centered. and you use the thinner of the two slots just to get that down in there. Now I'm telling you, you don't want to go too far in, okay? Because if you go too far in, you're going to destroy the generator that's in there. So I highly recommend doing this with discretion and only doing it with your fingers so you don't run it in there. And if you notice, I did not get to the inside the flywheel, and that's critical because you go past that, you run into this. Don't want to do that. Bad idea. So now what I like to do is once I've got that flywheel off, is so I don't lose little bits and pieces, I'll go right ahead and put the starter poles right back on. You know what I'm saying? Alright, put it back together, so I'll put it in here. Now, I'm not sure what I missed, so I'm just going to make a note. I used this puller on the flywheel and ran those screws. I took those two things off and ran those screws through these narrow slots into here. And you got to be careful on the 576 that you don't run them all the way through and then run into this generator. You know what I'm saying? So if you wind these in too far, they'll go all the way through and damage that. So I just go in like, I don't know, 1/4 inch. I don't go too far. It doesn't take much just to put a little tension on it and tap it, and they come right off. I want you to, before I start cranking on the case, I want you to see that this wire came up here, and this wire, the yellow one, came through the back side. Alright, let me bring that up close. You can see that yellow wire came up through that rectangular hole, and this one kind of came up through here. Okay, and there's your case. And there's your bad bearing. So there's our dilemma. There's a little play there. Probably not enough to matter, but since it is there, I'm going to pull that side out and replace both bearings. I'm not far in, right? So I'd like to see a different piston. So anyway, that's it for now. I have to say that Husqvarna shop tools really make a difference on this. And this is a puller pretty much set up for the 576. And the reason why you have to go to these kind of measures is because the crank has got stuffers, so you can't reach in through the top of the case like you can with a C-style splitter. And yeah, that bearing needs to get replaced. I'm not a fan of those nylon bearings. They get hot like that, they eventually have that nylon crumble. So while it's not failed at this point in time, I'll feel better about life by putting a new bearing in there. And to get it off the crank, because it was pretty tight, Harbor Freight yet again. You know, these kind of tools here may not be all that expensive, but there are times when this really saves your backside. So I'm going to use that puller to pull that bearing off. And then I'm going to do what I normally do by heating the cases up and dropping bearings in, taking this one out. By the way, this one was a complete failure, right? You know, it's kind of deceiving because believe it or not, even while it's like in that condition, it turns smooth. So if you just use the old smooth test to see whether or not that bearing had failed, you wouldn't pick up on it. And the reason why I'm going to replace the bearing in this case anyway is because of the way the balls are. That thing is running a little bit of an eccentric. So that means it's been wobbling around on the inside of that bearing now for quite some time. So that was enough for me to decide to pull the bearing out and pull the seal and replace them. So. Harbor Freight to the rescue. Yeah, bearing's pretty rough actually. This is the bearing that goes into that PTO side, and it's one that has an integral seal. So even though the inside diameter and the outside is the same as a 6202, like a 372, it's got an integral seal, and I don't know if that's better or not. About the only thing that does is it makes it harder to find a good aftermarket alternative to the nylon stuff, you know. You know, listen to those cows. I'm going to go hit this with water and chill it down fast. Yeah, I'll do the same thing on the other side. That's the bearing that goes in the other side, OEM. Yet again, I'll get it pretty warm, and once I get it warm enough, yeah, yet again, I'm going to go right for the water, chill it right down.
Ratchet it up, and he has done exactly that. Now he has Sexton in his sights from third. This is where it starts to get a little bit interesting because if you, was that the jump you're talking about? Yep, exactly. Adam didn't do it. That's why Chase did it on the last lap, and he carried so much momentum around the outside and made the pass finally hit going into the turn, and Adam caught onto that and started doing it.
These are a little bit unique. The thread that's on these is a little bit different than the standard 372s. So in this case here, I don't really have any of my special tooling, so I'm going to have to use the Husqvarna shop tools. Oh shucks. But that's a different thread. This is the shop tool for this particular one. It's designed to pull on the case versus the inner race, but you can go either way. And what it depends on is whether or not you have the seal in or not. Well, yet again, pull together another set of cases, and I use the OEM gasket. I'm going to use the shop tool puller, Husqvarna, and it's a little clumsy, but you know, you get to work. And what I'll do is I'm going to put the seal on after. I'm not going to put the seal on before. The other thing I'm going to do is just put a couple of these screws in to line things up. Not to pull the cases, just to line them up. And some of these have a habit of having the screws back out. So I find it sometimes advantageous to put in just a little tiny bit of the 1184. And you have to make sure you have the locating pins in, and I do. But as a review, did a thin film of this. I put a little bit of this on each of the case screws. Put the case screws in like finger tight, and that was more to align them than anything else. And then it's just the same old routine. It's a lot more awkward with this set of tools than mine. But the process is the same, you know. Looks pretty good to me. I guess at this point you just kind of wind in the screws. Still nice and free, so I'm going to guess this is a successful installation. I'm kind of the mindset of just get the handle on as soon as you can, and these are a little easier than some. Now it didn't have a rubber sleeve on that like the 372s do. And, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to get excited about it, I guess. But they just sort of clip right in like that. They're a little bit easier than you have these little bit larger screws. Some unique to 576 stuff. Before you go putting the top end on, you got to get those wires routed. One from the generator, right? And then one from the ignition kill wire. So this guy goes on right here. It actually goes on like this. And then it holds in this other one right here. Now its wire drops down through a hole. See, it goes in right there. And then it winds up past the handle and goes into this tray here, right up through here. And then the yellow one comes up and goes through this hole right there. Okay? So you kind of got to get those situated. Let me get the screws on this set before I go much further. And again, you got the red wire coming through the case and then up here, and then the yellow wire through this hole kind of gets captured here. And then you can get your fuel line. And then this is simply tank vent line. So you got to get all that stuff sorted out before you start dropping that down in there. And once you get it down in there, remember to leave this one out here. Leave that one out, because that one's for a ground Alright, now I probably should have put the seal in before I did all this, but I'll get there, it's fine. But I want to get the top end on there, just basically get things closed up there, you know. So that's what we're going to do next. Gasket goes on, and sometimes this works quickly and easily, and sometimes it doesn't. Let's see if I can make it happen this time. Kind of the trick on this to make it work is to get enough of the rings to get it squeezed in the piston, but leave enough of the piston above that you can actually get this on there. And oftentimes it'll go on pretty easy. Sometimes it won't, but I think it did that time. Yeah, there it goes. I would highly recommend, before you get all the way down, to get your throttle cable on. Okay, and I would at least start the fuel line. Then you got to make sure that things are lining up with the gasket. Tight. All right. The next thing I need to do, I believe, is get these wires hooked up and stuff. That yellow one goes right there. I'm gonna make sure it's a solid connection. The red one right here make sure that's a solid connection. There you go. These wires, these two, they're that fourth one of these, small one of these. Full throttle, choke. Has high idle. Okay. So the next thing is, before I go anywhere, I've got to get that seal put in there. Get it on the crank, on the side. Lots of oil. And here's the OEM seal. right like that. I kind of turn them on just a little bit. I don't just jam them. It just really needs to be flush. And there's a couple of OEM seal setting tools that let you do that pretty quickly and easily. I would say that's about as square as it's going to get. And so I used this one. Now, these screws, they do have a little bit of nylon thread locker on them already. If you look really close, you'll see the red. But I'm going to put some on anyway because I have certainly seen those back out on these saws. Brand spanking new. These stupid things will back out and make a mess. So I'm going to glue them in and make sure they do not back out. Of course, you got to be really careful with these too, because being that smaller thread, you know, it's pretty easy to strip them out. That's 26. Had to put these in the front. It's always a bit of a struggle to get that pin right there through this little cam, and that goes in through the slot here on the chain brake. And pretty much once you get those on there, you might as well zip these right down in there. I put a bunch of grease in there, just kind of what I do. See, it goes right in there, spring side to here. Basically, that's the kind of the detent. Pretty much hold it all in. And the sooner you get that tied down, the better. The one thing I don't like about 576 is they got little wimpy screws on these.